Hey, this is Callie from Telltale Poetry, and I'm here with Trevor Ketner, who just started a new press called Skull and Wind. Thanks for talking to me today, Trevor.
Thanks for having me on, Callie.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So tell me a little bit more about Skull and Wind and how you got started.
So the press is a micro poetry press. We're based in New Mexico. I am originally from New Mexico, and for various personal reasons, need to go back from New York, where I've been for the last 3 years. We're really focused on featuring work by Latinx and Indigenous writers. Not solely focused, but it's definitely something that we want to keep in mind as we're going forward, as a press that's really based in the Southwest and loves the Southwest. We want to support the communities that are here and the people who are here.
Interesting. So are you only accepting manuscript submissions from people based in the Southwest, or are you open?
No, we're very, very open. A lot of the people, though, that we have selected so far, so we announced our first two full-length collections, which are Who Speaks for Us Here by Leslie Contreras Schwartz, who's currently the poet laureate for City of Houston, and then Esteban Rodriguez's Displacement. And they are both based in Texas. They just happen to be. So it's not solely regional at all.
Okay.
But it seems that we are kind of based on what we've already selected. Maybe I have a predilection toward hearing from people from the Southwest.
Cool. And so tell me a little bit more about why you started this press.
Well, like I was saying, I need to return because my mother is ill and needs some help. And I just wanted to kind of avoid returning to New Mexico and feeling like somehow I was moving backwards. I also wanted to feel like I was contributing something to the communities in New Mexico. I grew up there. I went to college at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, and I really loved it there. But it made sense for me to leave when I did. And now I have kind of all of this experience, most of it in publishing. And if I'm going back, I wanted to be able to do something that I thought was important. Now, the thing is there's not a publishing culture in New Mexico right now, really. There are a few very small presses, but no one kind of looking to establish kind of a national name for publishing in New Mexico. And I felt like I could do that. I have about 7 years of publishing experience working at various organizations, including Grey Wolf Press and Catapult, which are two very different models of publishing, but I feel like provided me with a broad range of experience to actually start this thing. And so as I was making plans to start my move to New Mexico, I just really wanted to take advantage of the skills I developed at those places. And this seemed like the best possible way to do that. Also, I feel like New Mexico is full of artists and has every kind of quality to become a kind of like a Minneapolis of the Southwest. You have Grey Wolf and Coffee House and Milkweed as these major presses, independent presses in Minneapolis. And I felt like if it could happen there's no reason it couldn't happen in New Mexico. So I'm kind of hoping that Skull and Wind can be something of a catalyst and a nucleus for a new kind of understanding of how literature can have a presence in the Southwest.
Yeah, that's really cool. And can you talk a little bit about the model? You mentioned that Grey Wolf and Catapult had different kind of publishing models. What kind of publishing models are you working with?
Absolutely. So Grey Wolf is nonprofit, Catapult is for-profit, and Skull and Wind is kind of somewhere in between. We use a fiscal sponsor, Fractured Atlas, which means we can take tax-deductible donations, and they also help us with keeping our books a little bit as far as donations and things go, and have a lot of various services. But the press itself is actually an LLC. Another press that operates similarly is Sibling Rivalry Press out of Arkansas. And so I've been talking with a lot of publishers about the various ways in which to kind of start a press. And for the sake of flexibility, as we start to grow and as we try to figure out exactly the kinds of things we want to do, it made sense not to go with a kind of full nonprofit structure that requires a lot of work. It requires building a board. So this is kind of this hybrid approach that we're doing. It's kind of the best thing for us. And it means that we can offer this tax deductible status for donations, but also kind of be held accountable, because it's like right now it's just me running the press. I say we a lot, and I'm hoping other people can come on board soon, but right now it's just me. And so having the ability to depend on people who have a real sense of how to run the finances of things is really, really helpful. Yeah.
So you are, I just saw online, you are trying to raise $20,000 for Skull and Wind. Is that still the goal?
It is still the goal. It is a very, very difficult goal, but it is still the goal. Mostly because the press is really, really committed to paying people. We don't do advances for poets, but we are going to be paying basically everyone else who works for the press. Our deal with poets is they get a 30% royalty on all print sales and 50% on any ebook sales we may decide to do in the future. And then they also get 50 free author copies. And that part of that is just like we, as a press, don't have the funds, at least right now, to do advances. But we feel like that's a pretty generous offer. Now, you can't make that offer for other kinds of work, right? Where it's like, right now we're looking for a designer. And we would specifically, in order to align with our community commitment, find a Latinx designer. And designers are expensive.
They're very expensive. Yeah, I work with some.
But they do such good work, and what they do is so essential, I think, to the success of a book. Like, I've seen so many really good books not do very well because just the cover was not designed as well as it could have been. So we're trying to balance both getting the quality we need, but also what our budget will be. And that's just one chunk of that 20,000. The rest of it is all kinds of other things, like submitting books to prizes and being able to maybe attend at least one conference in our first year, and the ability to send out a lot of advanced review copies, like all of the various things that happen behind the scenes costs a lot of money. And I know there are lots of people who have started presses with less money or no money, but I want to really do right by the authors that we take on board. Like, I feel like I should run Skull and Wind the way I've seen other really successful presses run, which is you have to push the work out. But in order to do that, that really requires at least what I'm asking for. It's funny, talking to a lot of other people in India nonprofit publishing, they're like, I'm kind of surprised you're only asking for that much. But I also don't come from money, and I don't have access to a lot of money. So I am having to start this from nothing, which is why we're asking for so much support.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great plan. And I think, as far as your ideas for the future, what are you hoping that Skull and Wind can become? Are you hoping that financially, as far as the financial plan, what are you thinking of running the business on? Are you hoping to continue to raise money every year, or are you thinking that with the sales, it will kind of become self-funded?
So with the kind of model that we're doing, kind of the best scenario is we'll be able to maybe fundraise 20% of our overall budget and then make the rest up with sales, which is kind of the balance that we've heard from other presses that run the way that we do. So this is like a one-time big fundraising push. Like, it's really just startup funds. We would never ever ask for 20,000 again, unless we got to the size of, say, like a Grey Wolf or a coffee house, and we were really trying to, and we just had huge programs we were doing. Right now, we're just trying to find the best books. We want to get them out to as many people as possible, and so we just need that initial investment to get everything moving. And once everything's moving, I'm fully confident in our list. Like, I just finished the first round of edits on Leslie Contreras' book, Who Speaks for Us Here, and I just am so excited about it, which is part of why we also bumped up our publication calendar. We were originally publishing our first list of books in fall 2020, so that would have been around September, but we are now going to be publishing our first list spring 2020, which will be next March, which we're really excited about, but it does also mean that we have to raise the money faster. Because like I said, all of the things that have to go into the book beforehand have also been moved up. So we need to get a designer on board in the next month or two. And one book cover can cost as much as $3,000, which is more than we've been able to raise so far. So it's really, we're in a very unique position right now that I think once we get started and get past, we'll be able to avoid for a very long time. Like, I think that sales will be the major push for us.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And so after these two books come out, when will you be open for submissions?
So we don't actually close for submission. We are always open for them. That said, we will also, when I respond to submitters, going forward, I will let them know that what we're looking for is now fall 2021, and which is not actually an unusual amount of time for a press, really, between a submission and a pub date. Right. But I'm really, really committed to transparency as much as possible. So I like to communicate really directly with our submitters. So yeah, it's like I want the press to be accessible. We don't charge reading fees. So we do, as a new press, encourage any donation that can be made if someone's submitting. But like, it does not affect how we read a submission, whether or not someone contributes. And yeah, I mean, like, it just, I want people to be able to feel like this press belongs to them and is opening a space for them. So we're always reading.
Oh, perfect. And what type of books, do you have any ideas for the next collections you're interested, or do you have any advice for people that are hoping to submit to Skull and Wind?
I mean, so we publish full length and chapbook length. And so I would really encourage people to think in chapbook length. I mean, like, I personally love a chapbook structure. I think that, like, we're in a really interesting time in poetry and publishing in the US, where chapbooks are having kind of a renaissance, and I really enjoy them and I like editing them. So that is something that I would say, like, people, if you're trying to like throw together a full length, maybe see if there's something smaller within that that you feel really strongly about and you feel like has like a strong center of gravity, and submit that. Because our full lengths are actually very competitive. I'm getting a lot more full length submissions than I am chapbooks, which is funny, not what I was expecting at all. Mm-hmm. And then also, but if you feel like the project you're working on really fits with what we're publishing, then you should send it. Because I am a really heavy editor. Part of when I accept something from a poet, part of what we end up talking about initially is that I really edit heavily, which means I get into the line, but it also means that I'm looking at like the general structure of the book. I make a lot of suggestions. None of them are like, you have to make these changes edits, but they are all suggestions, and I have a lot of them, and that can be overwhelming, and also is not an editing style that some poets enjoy working with, which I fully understand. So like, I think that is something to be aware of when you submit to Skull and Wind, is like the likelihood that what you send in is going to look like what is actually published is really, really low. Like, it'll generally look the same, but there will be a lot of work that happens between acceptance and publication.
Right, that makes sense. So you're looking for people who are open to that type of kind of structural feedback or even line by line feedback on their work, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I see, for me, editing is kind of a conversation between the poet and the editor. It's like, again, I'm not dictating that anyone has to make any changes, but I will say the things that I think will make the poem or the book stronger. And if a poet can come back and tell me why they think that it doesn't need to be changed in like a convincing way, I'm totally fine leaving things the way that they were. But it is something like, I push poets and I expect pushback on some things, and that's not, if that's a dynamic that feels especially charged for people, then our styles probably won't fit really, really well.
Perfect. That makes sense. Well, this is super exciting. I'm going to let you go in a second, but do you have any other information that you want to share with poets interested in working with Skull and Wind or purchasing Skull and Wind collections?
Well, I mean, we will be opening for pre-orders soon-ish, which is a little non-standard, but I'm hoping that people will get excited about the book. But if you contribute to our fundraising campaign, which ends in about a month, all of the options included all of the rewards that we have. One way or another include a Skull and Wind book. So if you can give $25, that entitles you to one Skull and Wind title, which you get to choose after we've announced everything. So it's a really good way to kind of support the press at this moment when what we really need is just money in hand, while also kind of reserving for yourself a copy of our book. And really, people should just send in work. The worst thing that can happen is I'll say, this isn't for us right now, but I'll also probably give you some feedback. Like, I am really committed to the idea that I don't want to reject people's work, I just want to redirect it. So the ability to look at something and say, okay, I think that you should read this book. I think this book would inform this, like inform how you're working a lot. Or say, I think that this press might actually really vibe with your work. Like, I want to be able for poets who come to Skull and Wind to feel like they can leave with something more than just not having us publish their book. So yeah, I really encourage people to submit their work.
Cool. Thank you so much. That sounds awesome. I'm going to share this with the Telltale audience and hopefully, get some people excited about Skull and Wind and what you all are doing.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. This was awesome.